Okay, so just did a bit of dry fire practice, and my primary hand is feeling a bit, and the secondary or support hand is feeling a bit too. So when you're practicing your trigger pull with a proper grip on pistol or rifle, typically with a pistol you actually want to hold it like you're vicing it, like you're preventing it from actually moving. So if you're trying to shoot fast or whatever, you typically want to practice by holding it as tight as possible. It'll probably cause a bit of a shake, but the point is to strengthen your muscles. However, the problem with this is when you do this, you actually are going to start getting stiff wrists, and what's happening is you have tiny little bones in your wrist, and when you flex like this, your muscles are contracting. Your wrist muscles and the tendons and everything are pulling together, and basically they're crunching each other. So I don't know if you can hear this. That's my wrists from years of doing this. And the thing that can help this is stretching out on a pull-up bar. Or you can do stretches on the floor or on the end of a table. Now, I gave you a little bit of a visual demonstration of these, but here's the thing. Let's go over them one at a time and explain why these are good. Why these are good for basically preventing these from getting, all cramped up, and also why it kind of helps, this heal a bit. You don't want to overdo dry fire practice. You can actually cause some pretty gnarly injuries to your hands, wrists, and such. So you also don't want to burn out your forearms, especially your trigger finger forearm. You can see the activation. There's activation muscles up in here that you can feel actually activating when you're pulling the trigger. So that forearm part actually gets a fair amount of usage and a fair amount of a workout. So stretching out that part in particular can be targeted. So I'll go ahead and show you guys that. So anyways, let's go and get to the demonstrations. First stretch we're going to talk about is using a pull-up bar. So first thing you need to do is actually have a pull-up bar, whether that's your little shower curtain-esque type pull-up bars or door frame. I recommend getting if you need to, stand on a stool or something in order to reach this, and that's fine, a little stool assist or something like that. But the basic principle that I want you to keep in mind is when you're going to do these stretches, you need to be able to touch this part up against the bar and then be able to curl it in like this. First thing I like to start out with is actually just neutral grip, but if you don't have that, go ahead and do it underhand or overhand. It doesn't matter. Do it as many positions as you can. Having the neutral grip allows you to basically do it outboard, inboard, and then you can do your towards you, away from you. Kind of like, being on the floor or on a table or whatever, you're able to get almost all the angles, right? These outward ones aren't really necessary for this. So, with all that said, I'm going to start with the neutral. And first thing you're going to do is you're going to relax your thumbs. And I like to put them on the side with my fingers. They're not going to provide any help. Some people would say, well, just leave them out here. Well, you're providing muscular tension to keep them straight. Because if you're actually relaxing your thumbs, they're going to go in like normal. And it's going to look like they're trying to clasp. Some people may say that's okay. Me, not so much. I like to keep it away, kind of like in the proper military salute form where you're trying to put your thumb on top of your hand, which is impossible, but make sure that your salute is right on. So it doesn't require muscular tension, it's just the bar holding it. Anyways, so when you start out, what you're going to do is you're going to pull your scapula down, like you're basically trying to pull your shoulder blades down and your shoulders back. That's how you get in a good pull-up position. So you don't want to basically hang by your rotator cuffs and stuff like that, trying to dislocate your shoulders and stuff. You want to provide that tension like you're going to do a pull-up, and then you go down and hang, and you're doing it in pumps. And then you start relaxing one finger at a time. You start relaxing the pinky, and I put that under the bar, so it has to be. And then I pump a few times. And all I'm doing is going down, and I have my scapula, straight and down. It's all the way flat and down, like it's going to provide tension to pull me up, but it's not. I'm using my feet, and I'm just dropping. And then do the ring finger, and then basically do the opposite, where you start out with the index finger, and then it's just the ring finger and the pinky. This one is difficult because these typically do not have all that much size or strength to hold up on the bar, so you're going to have to pump. And then of course you can just hang there for a few seconds. And then one of the other things you can do is kind of rock back and forth. Try to relax as much of your fingers as possible. And then of course you just do the opposite of all of that. If you have a neutral grip, one finger at a time, and then fingers facing you, fingers face away, you just do the same thing over and over again, and you'll notice that it's going to feel really loose. There's going to be very little contact, and that's just one of the reasons why I like this the most. So also we're going to move on to this one. So basically all you're doing is just tossing your hands over the bar at the wrist point, right at the bend point. You are basically using your hands as hooks. So there you go, like the arachnids from Starship Troopers, just right over the bar. So now, then you basically are going to do like you're going to do a pull-up. You can actually do pull-ups like this, I promise. You can basically, I'll do it this way because I already did my pull-ups for the day. You basically just arachnid it. This is probably one of the best ways to actually help your wrists and help your arms. But you arachnid it, and then you just hang, and you just pump. Now you can do pull-ups, but most of the time it's not really necessary, especially like this. It can be very difficult to actually do a pull-up without slipping off or having to use your fingers to kind of hold the bar a little bit. And of course, you're using some forearm muscles, so this is not going to help really with these forearm muscles that'll probably be burnt out from doing dry fire. But it is helping a lot with these bones, which is probably the most important for most of us. So anyways, this is my favorite of all of them. And of course, if you have a neutral grip, it's very easy to do pull-ups on. Counter pressure, a little bit of a chest workout, and yeah, pretty good one. Very good on the wrists. You can't really do it this way though. So you're pretty much away from you, towards you, neutral inboard. And that's pretty much it. For the floor segment, the best thing that you can do is keep in mind the purpose of using the floor. So basically this is your way of relaxing. You're not really doing it on your feet like a table method. So basically with the floor is you want to have your shoulders above your hands. You want to make sure that your shoulders are directly above your hands when you're starting out. Everything is good and lined up. So basically I like to start with my fingers out to the sides, of course the thumbs just resting, and my shoulders are above my hands, or at least above my wrist, this area where the bones are. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go from one side to another, and I'm keeping these arms straight and locked out because I'm trying to use this in order to torque this and bend this area and get an angle. So if I get my shoulder above my fingertips right here, then I want to make sure that I get them above my fingertips here. However, say with this one, I'm able to get my shoulder, you know, further out. It actually goes out to about here. Does that mean that I'm going to try to do that on this one? Not necessarily, but I can, because I actually do have a good enough range of motion to do that. So basically what I'm saying is, if you're doing this side-to-side movement, along with all the ones I'm going to show you, basically you don't want to exceed the limitations. You want to make sure that it's consistent. So if you want to start out just side-to-side, rocking just above the tip of the fingers, then that's fine. Now if you can get your elbow to the tip of the fingers and like to where it looks like your elbow is directly above your fingernails, you know, you're stretching pretty good. But again, you don't want to hold, you just want to go back and forth and pump. You're basically just teasing it. And you'll feel the stretch. And when it starts getting a little much in here, you need to stop. Which for me, it was pretty quick. So then I like to do the opposite. Basically the same thing, having my fingers put inboard now, and having my wrists, you know, this area that we're trying to stretch out and flex out, having that basically above my shoulder. If you have to interlock your fingers because you have such big hands, then, you know, by all means, do what you got to do, right? But as much as you can, try to relax it. It can be uncomfortable. If you have something like something you can cushion this with, then go ahead and do that. No big deal. Just as long as you're following the same principle. Arms completely locked out, and you start going side to side. Now, same thing. If you feel like your shoulder is going out in front of your fingertips on one, like this one feels like my shoulder is going further than on this one, it may not be true, but I try to keep everything limited and on the same playing field on all these stretches. You don't want to overexceed just on one. You want to keep them nice and level and make sure that you're keeping track. So if I'm doing this stretch and my shoulder only reaches about here because of limitations, I don't want to just go as far as I can on this one. You want to keep them in line. So if you can't do a few rocks back and forth like this and just keep it nice and symmetrical, and then try to get a little bit further, and you can't do that without pain, then don't try to do the other one that you know won't have pain. Just keep them together. Obviously this one is the better one, or whichever one is a better one. It's not going to get hurt by not having that complete stretch necessarily. So that's that. So you can notice that I move my knees forward, basically right where my hands are. That's for balance. You want to keep balanced. You don't want to, you know, bend side to side and then fall over. That could really mess up your wrist because it's like having someone doing a wrist lock on you. But yeah, so just pump these out, and then you got your front and back. Same deal as before. Locked out, shoulders above where you're trying to stretch, and you just go a little bit forward. Now this is pretty easy because the one that's going to give you the most pain, whichever hand it would be, or wrist, that's going to limit your range of motion. So instead of like these isolated ones where you got to do it one at a time, kind of like barbell curls, if both of them are doing the same exercise, the one that's weakest will control the movement. And that's good. You want to do that. You don't want to get to hurting at first. You want to test the limits a bit. This is all about patience. And then you go back. Now going back, you're not really going to have to go back very far. Again, this is like putting yourself in a wrist lock, but you're just stretching all angles that you can. So, with all that said, that is using the floor. So you have this with fingers outboard, fingers inboard, and maybe interlaced if you need them to be, fingers forward, fingers back. So, it's that simple. Very simple. You don't want to hurt yourself doing this. Go slow. Be nice to your body, feel out what the situation is with your wrist, and by the end of it, they should feel nice and healthy and just very loose. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Here we're going to be doing table stretches. It's very much like the floor stretches that I just showed you, but you're just using the edge of the table. This is something that you do real quick, or maybe on the fly. You're just walking around the house and you feel a little bit of a tension in your wrist here and you want to kind of stretch it out a little bit. Well, one of the things here is it's a little bit easier to stretch the actual forearm rather than just isolating the joint, which it'll do. It'll stretch out a little bit of these bones too, but one of the good things about this is you can get your fingers right on the table here, and of course you can have your hand bent a little bit, try to keep these fingers on, and then just bend with it. And yeah, you basically are moving your shoulder to your fingers, and that can help stretch out this muscle a little bit. And another thing you can do is just like this, fingers back, just going back like that and trying to go on basically like a clock going around. And this one right here will hit these back areas. You'll feel it wherever you need that stretch at. Again, you just pump. You don't want to go too extreme with this. You just pump it out, don't hold. And I'm just going to do another one. And of course, you can do it with both hands. And you're not pushing, you're not really pushing up with this. You're just leaning down and you're using your back to go up. You're easing off of it. So it's just a little bit and then you go. And then just a little bit of a little clock work, I guess you could call it, because you can rotate it like in almost any direction like a clock to get the stretch that you need. So inboard, palms up, or palms on the table. If you're going to do palms on the table, I typically just use the edge, but yeah, use something soft like a towel or whatever, because you can get kind of, you can pinch your little bones and stuff here. It can kind of not feel too good on a hard flat surface at first, so if you don't want to have to deal with it, then don't. Anyways, that's the table stretch. I hope you found this video informative. So if you're a serious shooter, I'm pretty sure you'll find this pretty valuable. There's other methods and techniques that you can use to stretch things out, but I found that in personal experience and by the suggestion of physical therapists, you want to pump your stretches, especially in these areas. You don't want to, or rocking, as I showed you, you don't want to sit there and hold them unless it's like on the pull-up bar as I showed you. You want to have as little intervention as possible to where you're hanging. That way you're actually getting a separation, maybe even doing wrist pull-ups, where basically you're just pulling the wrists over as I demonstrated. So with all that said, let me know what you think in the comments below if there's other things that you think would also be useful. If I didn't explain it clear enough before, the reason why I do pumps instead of holds, muscle tear potential, and also stressing out the tendon, because a lot of people don't ease their hands forward, or we just don't have the patience for it. So it's best just to pump it. So really that's my reason for it. Some people may disagree, and that's fine. But I just wanted to get a video out there to kind of talk about why it's important that we stretch at least these areas, because we're working with tendons and muscles that actually do benefit from stretches. So with all that said, I appreciate you guys watching. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. You guys have a good one.